Okay, we're getting started with another video on the Antichrist. That series on the end time Bible prophecies. And before I had introduced you to the infallible timeline quote framework for the 7 years right before Jesus' return. That framework starts with the Gog-Magog event. Final event is Jesus returning to this earth and with the saints. And you're seeing the infallible timeline framework on your screen to my side. And up above me we have a mini framework, a timeline framework of how you can refer to this person when you get in discussions on different forums. That mini framework has him as the little horn, then the Antichrist, and then as the beast. So what you do when you get in those discussions, and I gave an example above of how to utilize that convention. You just bold or color highlight whichever of those functional roles he'll be in your discussion. For example, if you're talking about the person when he confirms the covenant for 7 years, he does that when he's in the role of being the Antichrist. He just got anointed the king of Israel by the false prophet person. I hadn't really mentioned about him, but he's in Revelation 13, and we only hear about him when there's 42 months left in the 7 years. But because of some traditions in Judaism of what they're expecting of the Messiah, of him being anointed as king of Israel, is going to be by a known prophet. And on their Passover, they always set a plate for Elijah. So that person will probably be claiming to be Elijah, the false prophet will be. And in Israel's history, when Israel was one nation, before it split up into two nations, following King Solomon's rule, there were three kings, and each one of them was anointed by a known prophet. First, Saul by a prophet, and Daniel. Both those were anointed by the prophet Samuel. And then when Solomon came for his time, he was anointed by Nathan. So we're going to have the false prophet is going to anoint this Antichrist person, who then confirmed the Mount Sinai covenant for 7 years, because he's going to be acting as expected for the leader of Israel. Now, it may be he may not read the law to the nation of Israel. It may be that he stands on the Temple Mount and has the false prophet beside him. False prophet reads the law. But that's going to be televised world. It's going to be a huge event following Gog-Magog. And what we're actually doing on our timeline, everything is events. One event leads to another event, leads to another event. And that series of events then becomes a critical path. So now I'm going to present a fundamental chart of that critical path of events. Later on, I'm going to really develop this out. It's going to be a whole lot more detailed, a whole lot more information. But that's too much to flood you with right at the start, because it gets too congested and too complex. So I'm just showing the basic fundamental critical path of events. So it's going to start out with a person right before Gog-Magog. He's going to come to power in Europe as the leader of Europe. And then it's going to turn out that we don't know how long a gap between him becoming the leader of Europe and the Gog-Magog event taking place. We just don't know. But eventually that Gog-Magog event will take place, and right before it, he will have positioned his EU army in Greece. We get that information that'll be the area he comes into the Middle East from in Daniel 8:9. He comes into the Middle East with a strong army, and that he ends up with that army in that area, general area, for 7 years. So when the Gog-Magog takes place and it's all over, said and done, this little horn person will have come down into the Middle East. Israel will think he's their long-awaited Messiah to be anointed the King of Israel. They have good reason for that, because one of their top theologians called the Rambam, that's an acronym for Maimonides. I may be torturing his name a little bit, but at any rate, and mispronouncing it. But at any rate, you can look the Rambam up on the internet. Talks all about him. All Jews in Judaism thoroughly familiar with the Rambam, and also another theologian named Rashi. And Rashi, he made commentary in their Bible, the Tanakh, and their Bible has always all of Rashi's comments beside below each verse. And you can go to a place called Chabad.org and look up the Tanakh there. They have an English translation of the Tanakh, and you can click on one of the keys, and Rashi's comments will be shown as well. And I've read those, and he gives some good, he's not always right, but he does give some good information and insights. So that's how we pick up information. We be a good listener to other people and read what we can, try to be well read. So this person appears to the Jews to have stood up for them. He'll be a Jew himself, to fight the battles of God in defending Israel. That's one of the teachings of the Rambam, one of the principles of the Messiah. So with that appearance that he has staged his army in Greece as a deterrent, we don't know whether they will actually engage the Gog-Magog force or not. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. We don't know for sure. But we do know he comes from that area of Greece, one of the four breakup kingdom areas of Alexander's Greek Empire. Now, once this guy gets down in Middle East, Israel's, they're going to be all hyped up, saying, it's time for the Messiah. It's just going to be Messiah fever at that time, because they're going to know that Gog-Magog has happened already. So now they're looking for, expecting the Messiah. This guy's going to have all the appearance of being that person. And there are some indications over in 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 3 and 4, that within Christianity, there's going to be a great falling away. And this will be due to it. This person's going to look so much like the real Messiah to everyone, and that the Jews were right after all. Jesus, he really wasn't the Messiah, but a lot of people are going to think. So there's going to be a falling away in Christianity, just like Paul said in 2 Thessalonians 2, 3, and 4, before the day of the Lord begins. So he's going to confirm the covenant with many, and this will be just in line with what the Jews are thinking of, because the new covenant in Jeremiah 31, which Christians take to be Jesus' sacrifice on the cross and rising from the dead for forgiveness of our sins and atonement to be right with God. So the so the person's going to confirm the Mount Sinai covenant, and that's going to look like to the Jews a renewal of the current covenant they have with God in their minds, because they don't. When they read that new covenant in Jeremiah 31, the way they read it, this is real important to understand. They read that as a being the renewal of the existing covenant in their eyes as being the Mount Sinai covenant. So this is going to all play in together. Here this guy's come after God made God. It will look like he's standing up, ready to defend the Jewish people, just like the Rambam said the Messiah is supposed to do. And he's going to be renewing the existing covenant by having the law read on the Temple Mount as Moses required in Deuteronomy 31, 9-13 for all future leaders of Israel. And that is supposed to be done on the Feast of Tabernacles Day from the place of God's choosing. That's what it says in those passages in Deuteronomy 31, 9-13. At any rate, so he's going to have that law read to the nation, and this will not be a peace treaty. As I said before, that's an idea that's been handed down through all these commentators. I mean, it's not recent. I mean, this has been handed down hundreds of years that it'll be a peace treaty. This has been promoted through Dallas Theological Seminary. I'm, as one example. So, but that's really not right. And what they do, they base that on is in Daniel 8, that this person destroys many by peace. So they start putting things together, and they come up with a peace treaty. Now, in 1 Thessalonians 5, Paul was saying that before the day of the Lord, the world's going to be saying peace and safety. Well, the reason the world's going to be saying peace and safety right before the day of the Lord is the day of the Lord begins. I won't be, day of the Lord's real long. It even goes into eternity. But what we're looking at is just the beginning, which a lot of the bad things are going to happen. The great tribulation, those kind of things will happen in the beginning years of the eternal day of the Lord. The day of the Lord split up into that short time frame. Then we got a 1,000-year millennial rule, and then we got an eternity where it just extends into eternity. Okay, but we got a sense in the world is saying peace and safety because it will think it has entered the Messianic age with this Antichrist person as being Messiah, and he's just been anointed the King of Israel. So they're saying peace and safety. Well, that goes on for about 3 years, and part of Jewish belief, the way they see the end times playing out, they saying when the real Messiah, who they're calling the real Messiah, shows up and starts doing these messianic things, Christianity is basically going to just kind of fade away. It's just going to be too much evidence that this guy is the real Messiah. So this is why there's going to be a falling away in Christianity, is because it's going to appear that that person is the Messiah, and the Jews were right all along about Jesus and their thinking that he's not the Messiah. But one day, this guy goes off on the deep end. That one day, he goes into the temple, and I should say he stops the daily sacrifice, which will be going on at that time as well. And he will go into the temple, sit, and claim to achieve godhood. That is the transgression of desolation. It's not the abomination of desolation, but transgression of desolation. And that's on the chart where it says the Antichrist commits the TOD act, transgression of desolation. He goes there, he claims to have achieved godhood. Now, the reason I'm saying achieve godhood is because in Ezekiel 28, verses 1 through 10, it's talking about that person. And his getting the big head magnifies himself in his heart, which is also in Daniel 8, that this person magnifies himself in his heart. He gets the big head. He gets to thinking he's achieved God. And in that set of verses, in Ezekiel 1 through 10, it says there of this person, he sits in the temple of God in the middle of the seas. That's just another way of saying he's showing the whole world. And it says in there, he's thought that he is a God. So that's why I say he thinks he's achieved godhood. But also in his those same set of verses, in Ezekiel 1 through 10, God says, even though you have set your heart as God. So he's achieved, he thinks, as being God, as being a God, or achieved godhood. So, at any rate, so God has that person killed. He brings strangers against him. It will probably be, we don't know for sure, this is speculation, he'll probably be assassinated. Now some people say a wound to the head, but really, and they get that from Revelation 13, which says one of the heads had received a deadly wound. But it's one of the 7 heads on this beast, creature that comes out of the sea. It's a pictorial. It doesn't actually mean that he's wounded in the head, although it could be. We don't know for sure. But I just wanted to point that out. There's no guarantee he's going to be shot in the head or wounded in the head unto death. So God has that person killed, it says in Ezekiel 28. That's actually a code name, Prince of Tyre. And later on in some other verses, down through Ezekiel 28, talks about the king of Tyre. Well, Prince of Tyre, king of Tyre. And it's obvious in the text that when he's talking about the king of Tyre, he's talking about Satan and how God is going to bring Satan to his end and be exposed for everyone to see. Now that's going to take place there on the Temple Mount the day Jesus returns. Everyone is going to see Satan visibly because he's going to expose Satan. And it says he's going to bring up a fire in the midst of it. He's going to turn into ashes. Well, later on I'm going to explain what that actually means is this abomination of desolation that gets set up on the Temple Mount after this, the Antichrist has been killed, after he's shown that he's the revealed man of sin and not the Messiah after all. God's going to have him killed by strangers. Then in Isaiah 14, 15 through 20 verses, God, in disdain for this person, for one thing, he's a Jew who destroys his people and his land. He's going to turn on his own people. He's not a typical Jew. We don't think harshly of the Jews. This guy's an exception to how Jews normally act. They don't act like this, and act crazy or anything like that. They're wonderful, loving people. So, but they're kind of missing the mark on the Messiah and a few things like that's a term they use, missing the mark. not intentionally trying to do wrong. They just, quote, miss the mark on Messiah. But they're going to come around when this person betrays them and their covenant. So God brings this person back to life. He's not going to let his soul rest there in hell, the place of the dead. And it says there he's not going to have a big house. When it says house, like the other famous kings, they're just, it's talking about a big fancy tomb. That's what it's talking about as far as being a house. So he's not going to be given that honor because he's only going to be dead for a short amount of time. And when he comes back to life, after being dead about maybe 3 days, 4 days, we aren't told for sure, but the whole world's going to see him set up in the casket because his funeral, everything's going to be, on TV and everything when they can view all this happening. And the world's going to be shocked when that happens, and it's going to look like his earlier claim of being claiming to achieve godhood, except the saints and Christians at that time, people have converted to Christianity. They're not going to be fooled by this. Now, that doesn't mean the rapture hadn't already taken place before this, because the rapture has got to take place. It could be pre-tribulation, pre-70 weeks, or it could be after that, up to the point where this person goes into the temple, sits, claims to be God, triggering the beginning of the day of the Lord. Because in 1 Thessalonians 5, Paul says Christians are appointed to wrath. And that wrath comes upon the world on the day of the Lord. Those first beginning years, we have the wrath of God being poured out. Satan's going to be cast down to earth near the middle of those 7 years. We get that on Revelation 12. And he'll have his wrath. He's come down. He knows he's got just a little time, because God's going to put him and his kingdom of Babylon the Great, which is a mystical kingdom. It's not a physical kingdom. They talk about Babylon the Great in Revelation. And Babylon the Great is Satan and his group of angels that rebelled against God eons ago. And by the way, they're out to destroy all humanity. If you're a human, you're my people. But even if you're missing the mark as far as religion goes, humans are my people. And Christians are my brothers and sisters in Christ. So, but if you're a human, and even if you're not a Christian, you're still my people. There's another group of created beings, angels, Satan and his group. They're not my people. That group of created beings are trying to destroy every human being, because we're made in the image of God.